All right, let's talk about one of the biggest, most backward-sounding ideas in the startup world. How is it that some of the most massive, globe-spanning companies all started out incredibly small? I mean, almost comically niche. It feels like it shouldn't work, but today we're going to unpack exactly why it's the secret sauce.
So let's just ask the big question right out of the gate. If your dream is to build a massive, household name kind of company, what's your first step? Most people think you need a gigantic idea right from day one, something that millions of people are going to want. But what if that's actually the fastest way to fail?
You've really got two paths you can take. The first is what we could call broad and shallow. You try to make something that a ton of people want, but they only want it a little bit. The other option, go narrow and deep. You make something that only a few people want, but they want it a lot. Now, your gut might be screaming that the first option is the way to go, but the real magic, the key to unlocking massive growth, is hiding in that second one.
And that second approach, the narrow and deep one, well, it has a name. We're going to call it the well strategy. Think about it. You're not trying to create a giant, shallow pond. You're digging one deep, narrow well that taps right into a source of pure demand. So here's the core of it. You have to start by dominating a tiny market. You're looking for what's called a larval market. It's this small, almost hidden group of users who are absolutely desperate for what you're building. They are the seed from which a giant redwood can grow. And the key word here is urgency. Let's be real. Your first version of the product, your version 1, is going to be a little rough. It's going to have bugs. It won't be perfect. But for the well strategy to work, your first users have to need it so badly that they just don't care. Their problem is so painful that your clunky early solution feels like a miracle to them. Okay, so this all sounds great in a presentation, right? But does it actually hold up in the real world? Oh, you bet it does. Let's look at some real stories from the garage, from the very beginning of some companies you might have heard of. Take Apple, way back in 1976. Who was their market? It wasn't everybody. It was this tiny, tiny group of electronics hobbyists. Seriously, almost nobody wanted a personal computer. But that small group, they didn't just want one, they were obsessed with the idea. That was Apple's, well, their larval market. And, well, that market eventually grew to include basically the entire planet. Or how about a company called ViaWeb, one of the first to help people build online stores? You know how they got their first users? The founders literally went out and built the stores for them by hand, one by one. That is the definition of something that doesn't scale. You can't do that for 1 million customers. But for your first 10, it was exactly what they needed to do to prove people wanted this thing. And then there's Airbnb. In the early days, investors hated the idea. The founders were literally funding the company with a binder full of maxed out credit cards. So how did they know they were onto something? Because their first handful of guests didn't just like it. They loved it. They raved about it. That intense passion from a few people was a way more powerful signal than lukewarm interest from thousands. So we've seen the what and the who. But now for the really interesting part. Why? Why is starting so small such a superpower? Let's get into the mechanics of why the well strategy actually works. Going small gives you 3 huge advantages right out of the gate. First, it gives you permission to launch something that's not perfect, because those early, desperate users will forgive you. Second, it creates this incredible feedback loop. You can literally talk to every single user and build exactly what they need. And third, maybe most importantly, it's definitive proof that you're solving a problem someone desperately cares about. You can think about it like writing. When you start something, an essay, a piece of software, a company, it's going to be messy. It's not supposed to be perfect from the start. You're just sketching. And you need a small, passionate audience that's willing to stick with you through that messy phase while you're still finding your rhythm. So, as a startup starts to grow out of that initial small well, how do you really know if you're on the right path? What's the one thing, the ultimate test that proves you're actually creating something of value? Forget about the buzz. Forget about getting your name in the press. Forget about how cool your business plan looks. When people with real money, investors, acquirers, are trying to figure out if what you've built is the real deal, what's the single number they care about most? It's this: users. The number of people actually using your thing. Why? Because users are the only concrete proof that you've created wealth. At its core, wealth is just what people want. And if people are flocking to use your product, that is the market itself telling you that you've made something valuable. It's the ultimate truth. And that really brings us to the most famous mantra in all of Silicon Valley. Everything we've been talking about today, the well strategy, larval markets, passionate first users, it all boils down to these four incredibly simple but powerful words. So the next time you're thinking about building something new, try to reframe the question. Don't ask yourself, what's a big idea? Instead, ask this: what is a huge, painful, urgent problem for a really small group of people? Find that, solve it for them, and you might have just found the beginning of something very, very big.